Hey Andy, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sabi, thanks so much for having me.
So excited to have you. First of all, do I call you Andy or do I call you Art?
I think if we're talking big clouds, you got to call me Artz.
All right, that's fair. What do your friends call you?
They call me Artz, Artsy, Andy, A squared, Andweez, Wario, Arts.
All
so,
right, now the Big Cloud community have a lot of names for you. Now we're so it's a close community. So,
yeah,
I want to start off with asking you a very open-ended question
sure.
because I don't want to bias the answer. So, how do you think about Big Cloud? And I will let you take it wherever you want to take it.
Yeah, sure. I started out my career in gaming, in social gaming in 2009. We were building games online at a company called OMG Pop, where anyone could come on and play a game of Hover Kart, which was like a Mario Kart clone. This glorified game of tic tac toe. We had our own Tetris clone, which we got sued for. So all these different game instantiations lived on top of this game platform called OMG Pop. And then I was in charge of analytics, and so I had all my analytics databases in the back end, a users table, a table of coins for how many coins you had in your coin purse for the games. For me, when I think about blockchain, it's always about like this is a database, right? This is one giant ledger underneath. It, when you see think of a spreadsheet with everybody recorded in. For me, it was really like, oh, this is cool. This is the back end of OMG Pop. This is the gaming platform, but you need the apps to build on top of it, and this is one sort of shared infrastructure. Back then, people were building all their games on top of Facebook, so you sort of had this Facebook platform, Zynga, Farmville, Mafia Wars. All these games were getting hundreds of millions of users on top of Facebook, and then those companies themselves had a bunch of shared infrastructure, and they had a multiple portfolio of games they were launching. So I kind of think about Big Cloud in the same analogy from the gaming world where I came from, where you have this giant shared backend that is very highly scalable, assuming we can get many nodes and the team can continue to improve upon it. That allows for a certain set of things: comments, likes, posts, follows, and this really interesting thing called the creator coin. The thing that I thought of back in the day was Facebook platform. We had this thing called Facebook credits. We had to pay a pretty hefty tax that Facebook kept throttling. It was 30 cents on the dollar, 15 cents on the dollar. So you had to always be at their mercy. And here in the creator coin economy, that's you're in direct control of that, or you have much more control, I should say. So I really just think about it as like that back end layer, and we have no idea sort of all the blossoming of apps on top of it that they could spawn. I don't think Facebook would have said, "Hey, this farming game is going to reach 1 billion users on our platform" when they first launched it. So that's kind of the equivalent thing here. I think there's room for games. I think there's room for social media, of course. I think there's room for all kinds of like hybrid apps that use the chain, have some behavior on chain, some behavior off chain.
Love that. One thing I watched your interview with Maz and I think one you did with the Cloud podcast. And one thing I loved about you when I was watching the interview that you were very curious. You were like asking him questions to see what his user behavior was like on the
Yeah.
platform. And as a VC, I'm pretty sure that anyone you talk to, you try to understand like how is this person using the platform, right? What have you found so far that has like really intrigued you? Like how are people using the platform right now?
The artists are really cool. I've seen there's this interesting dynamic where you have a few early whales and early adopters and OGs and Genesis Block, and then you have newcomers to the platform that are getting there's sort of status games being played, and there's memers that are coming out. There's artists that are sort of there's artists that are making art of these whales, and that sort of calls back into mind like Florence and the Renaissance and the Medici's and commissions and so you've got this creative class on there that's really the driving force. I was fortunate enough to be a whale, but I'm not. I'm happy. I love the platform. I want to do whatever I can to support it, but my contributions are much far less than a lot of the creative people on the site, which I'm really grateful for and appreciative of. So I like to see the folks that are experimenting with the ways they can use posts. I've seen people use posts as like there's a site that I saw that was like effectively a slot machine. I think it's called Double or Nothing. You send in one, it's trust based, so buyer beware. But you send in one clout, and they have some rake. I think a 2 or 3% rake, and I hope I'm not blowing up their spot or sticking any regulators on them in this. But they'll send you back Double or Nothing, and they're taking on risk. And I think that's cool. They're running their own sort of. So a post in and of itself, because it's permanent, like you can do a lot of different things in that. H. Paulson had a cool post where he had the characters. He had some dynamic text in the post where text in the post itself would update as a function of the number of comments or likes. So the post said like this post has, you know, Boolean number of likes, and that would be like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 based on how many likes it got. So I kind of think of like the post is this really interesting thing to play with, where it's
Yeah.
like a vending machine of sorts or a slot machine, or that's pretty cool. The artists and the way they're interacting with others. Like you see these ensemble memes that are getting created, which are really cool. You don't really see that as much. Like people investing the time that's actual minutes and hours of their day to create this stuff, just for the health of the community and everyone's enjoyment. I really love that. The apps, of course, we would be nothing without. In the future, that we really depend on them to really kind of build out a lot of broaden the surface area and give us more tools, and also more, just more, make it more adoptable by normies. So that's a lot of us are, somewhat crypto savvy, somewhat tech savvy, have some disposable free time. We can kind of play around and maybe some disposable income to afford to be able to get rugged on the occasional rug or. So I think right now we're pretty fortunate that we can sort of play around with this, but I think we need people to kind of level up the infrastructure, at least on the user facing side.
Makes sense. So like, there's one part of it, like you said, like the games like, like Double or Nothing, which is fun and interactive. Then there's the other part of it, which is like, tools that are like the problems that you face like, on a daily basis. Like for example, I was talking to ASG, like he said you hate it, but I'm still gonna say it. He's like he started bits today as newspaper for Artz. And and then even like even with Chris, like he made that sheet, and then there comes Jack. He take that concept which was being done manually, and he took that and turned that into a product like BitHunt, right? And same thing right now. Like one thing I'm seeing right now is a lot of tools are coming with scheduling posts, because you can't only log in through this one account, but like you want someone else to schedule the post for you, or like your teammates or whatever. Any other problems that you are currently facing right now that you see opportunity there, that there should be something that you're like, oh man, I hate this. There should be something built there.
Oh, okay. A request for startups of sorts.
Yeah, kind of, I guess.
I love Bits today. I think ASG and the team are doing a phenomenal job. Um, I love what you're doing on the podcast side. I love. I think there's so much, and there's so much unknown. Like in DeFi, the idea of a flash loan kind of blew my mind when I first learned about it. I was like, "Whoa! You could borrow $1 billion anyone in the world, like if you promise to return it in the same transaction, right?" So it's like, "Whoa! Okay, that's cool." Um, so we don't know what those things are. So that's the thing I'm curious about. Things that are bothering me right now. The mobile experience is kind of cloudy.
Fair.
It's endearing. I think a lot of us do a lot of engagement on Discord and Telegram. I don't know if this platform would survive without those two. So I'm part of, I don't know, a couple dozen groups across all of them. Luis is a good example. Luis joined. He created, Luis 1.0. He or she had. We don't know who's behind it. Um, had this really cool fervor of engagement that was all happening on site. But then I think as it kind of got to a fever pitch, they realized, okay, let's have a permanent Discord, and that quickly shot up to a couple hundred users, and then that really allowed things to really heat up and take off. So I think chat on site we really need that. DMs, the message is not encryptable is weird. A lot of the UI stuff, but I give them a break because they're doing great work. The devs are doing great work on all the stuff that matters right now.
Makes sense. I actually have a question to. I legit had a question about Luis and or David or with the day 5, and I was watching a talk, and I don't know if you can answer this or you, because we don't know who it is, but I'm just curious. So I was watching a talk with Balaji on pseudonymous economy at I think it was blockchain San Francisco blockchain 2019 conference. And he was talking about the how in the future he sees the pseudonymous economy. Where he kind of used the example of like taking the check mark with Mark Andreessen, and like kind of using that as an example where like right now he was talking about this 33 bits concept, where if you if 2 to the power of 33 is basically more than 8 billion people, right? So we are 33 bits away from any user in the world. And he was kind of giving an example how if you take away if you still keep the check mark, right, but you take away everything else. Example from Mark Andreessen, a pseudonymous account from Mark Andreessen. Now we're 18 bits away, so the 2 to the power of 10 or something like that. I just wonder, Balaji being such a crazy, guy behind crypto, and like he's bullish on it from so long. I don't see him not being on the platform. Why do I feel? Why do I feel it's Lewis or David has something to do with him?
Well, number one, you have to have some disposable time. So I don't know.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a good
I
point.
don't know
Yeah.
Balaji's daily schedule, but I would be really pleased to know that he was spending time with everyone on this site.
We'll leave it at
It's very possible.
there. But I mean, jokes aside though, but I think it's an interesting concept, like where even the concept of pseudonymous, like, there is when I was reading Lewis's, like, the posts, there's a lot going on there. He's trying to, like, set up a community with being anonymous, right? And pseudo anonymous, and that, I think, there's a very smart person behind that. It's not something just like a random person just doing shits and giggles with that, right? There's a reasoning why that's being done. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that. Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's really empowering. Diamond Hands had mentioned in the past that the idea of why is he Diamond Hands and not his own real moniker. I think there's something empowering about having a pseudonymous account that you can interact with. There's sort of you versus this faceless thing. There's no status game or like fight or flight response, or you're just interacting with this sort of mysterious unknown thing. It's kind of I think it takes away some of the like, prehistoric parts of our brain that were hardwired to sort of try to figure out who's behind the account. We're like, oh, we just kind of suspend disbelief, and I think it allows us to be just enter a bit more like creative mindset when we're interacting with that.
Makes sense.
In retrospect, a couple of us put a lot of money into Luis, and if that was a real person, we would always be saying like, oh, who is this person? Where are they from? What's their
Yeah.
past trend on-chain history? Let's really look at their LinkedIn, try to underwrite them in a way that when you're playing a game, you think, oh, this is a game, it's fun. Let me just whale into this account.
That makes sense. So you obviously work at Social Capital. You are alongside Chamath a lot. You guys probably talk a lot about this, and I mentioned him talk about BitCloud in his All In podcast, where he was talking about how quantifying reputation and trust that can really help with the misinformation that like you see with Facebook and all that stuff. That's one of the reasons he found the concept of BitCloud intriguing. That's what he said in his talk. You guys have probably have a lot of behind the scenes talks. What some of the things, anything you can share that you guys have chatted about this?
Yeah, sure. I think we think it's has very asymmetric upside potential. It's small number of users today, but it can be infinitely scalable to many different types of applications around the world, and it can bring. I don't think it's strictly good or bad. I don't put any value judgment on it. I think it's an interesting technology that people talk about what can be stored on chain in these posts and moderation. And they talk about psychological well being. So those are all of having a coin price attached to your name. Those are all great concerns. Yeah, I think Chamath, the angle he was mentioning around reputation is a really important one. How do you do business online as we all shift more and more of our days online into the internet? We're kind of still in this world of underwriting people's online activities using their offline behaviors. If you think about like fraud detection today, it will use some of your clickstream data. It'll also look at your social media profile. It'll also look at any past transaction you've had. Maybe it looks in your browser or your IP. So it's kind of summing together this sort of confluence of different real world and offline events. But as we think about reputation, like on BitCloud, I have no idea who the hell Clout Viz is. It's like a Wheel of Fortune wheel with a bunch of colors. But I love the guy or more gal. I don't even know who it is, but I buy the coin. I trust the person intimately, and now we can do business together and play games together, and be in a guild together or whatever we do to want to choose to. So I think that's pretty powerful. It's sort of a real the real world equivalent of like your board of directors, your cap table, or your think about like in Bangladesh and how you have like these communities and in terms of like group borrowing or in microfinance where they're sort of like co-signing for loans together. It's sort of the kind of equivalent idea here.
Love that. Um, what was the reasoning? Kind of changing topics a little bit. What was the reasoning behind Big Cloud Boys? What's the long term goal?
Good question. The reasoning was for fun. You'd have to ask Craig. He's a very clever and witty marketer and overall just very smart human being. And I think he was having a good time. He put out a meme and he was collaborating with Farouk and a couple others at the time. And Why he chose the five of us, that only heaven only knows. But he did, and then it was a thing. And I think a week or two later, Darman, he was interested, and we were like, "Whoa, someone wants to join the band." Okay, cool. Darman surprised us all and made an investment in the band. Benny had his post. I think that's when things really felt like, wow, this is real. So I think we're having a good time, and hopefully we'll produce some music. And but beyond that, it's just part of BitClout right now. While we're still there's this lag time between we had the early adopter wave. We're gonna have a lag time between now until we get a lot of interesting apps built. So
Yep.
it's sort of like a giant telenovela, or like some soap opera happening where you have all these random characters that are sort of keeping it interesting, which I find enjoyable.
Makes sense. I have a broad crypto question. It's something, by the way, to be honest with you, nothing to do with big cloud. I always wanted to ask this to somebody who understands the space, like who's more educated than I am, but I never had anybody to ask. I'm going to ask you if you can. But personally, like when you think about Bitcoin or Ethereum or cryptocurrency in general, right? Right now, I think the way we look at it is like the only way, or like you can't really stop Bitcoin at this point, right? It's like it's decentralized. There's nothing you can do. But the only thing that regulators or like the government, only thing they can do is basically penalize or whatever, like go after the the fiat on or off ramps, right? Where they make it harder so that the money doesn't come from crypto world to the real world, right? Um, I mean, at the end of the day, power. No one wants to lose power. The governments don't really want to lose power. But assuming in a very hypothetical, we become a decentralized world. Um, how do you see that happening? Like, what? Like, I'm sure government's going to make their own digital currency at some point. It's obviously going to happen, like China did. But how do you think anything regulators can do to stop in like Bitcoin or crypto?
Sure. Yeah, I think you brought the great point up of the off ramps and the on ramps. So when Tesla goes to buy Bitcoin or when MicroStrategy goes to buy Bitcoin, the institutional demand, where a lot of the potential inflows are sitting on the sidelines. Like right now, we have retail, we have some alternative institutional asset managers that are coming on, but there's billions and trillions of dollars that are not have no exposure to crypto for a lot of these reasons. So that part can be sort of permanently shut off, which that would affect the utility of this because you can there's ways we can all hold it, we can all do business peer to peer, but then the minute we have to go pay our taxes, or the minute we have a jurisdiction where crypto's not not accepted, not tolerated, outlawed, banned, then then we're subject to the regulation of the jurisdiction we're in. So the minute we have a business, the minute we have any sort of interaction, connectivity to the regulated world, that's where the throat to choke is. But as long as we're sort of operating in the shadows, if we're fully crypto native and we're doing our work and we're earning our income, then I think at that point there's much less that they can do. I think the other piece I've always wondered about is on the mining side. There's early on it was always a concern of like, oh, okay, these mining pools in China, are they going to have 51% collude? But I think at this point that's no longer a threat. Um, it's against their best interest. But national sovereignty. Not only will governments think about having their own digital currency, but will governments make a more concentrated effort to secure some of the world's mining hash power for these like public distributed chains like Bitcoin and Ethereum? Would the U.S. government have an interest in securing a part of the network and peering into the network and seeing what's going on? That's this is like a giant global resource now, and so this giant compute that exists in the world, like how our government's going to participate in that? That's something I think about a lot. There's a lot of smart people in different agencies that are paying attention. Especially when you have fraudulent behavior and you have from the earliest days, right? There's been a lot of money laundering, and that's not something
Right.
that is particularly, depending on your political views. I don't know if that's the best thing for society.
Yep.
So yeah, I think there's people that are definitely paying attention, and whether or not they're going to release a new chain and do a token sale, no, but they're not the forefront on that side. But it's in their best interest to monitor what's happening, and I think as long as they're playing a game of global, like a global political. They're looking at this from like the zoomed out, like relative to their peers, the countries. So the minute you see other countries moving in, that's when I think it starts to get interesting. As long as it's developers at the fringe and citizens kind of distributed, then I think there's still a wait and see approach.
I guess it was the wrong question. I meant when I said government, I meant more like Congress or the rule makers. That's what I meant. Like, do they? Yeah.
I think we both know the answer to
All right.
that.
I didn't say that right, but yes. Cool. That's great. That's a great way to say that. Yeah, it's interesting. It's something I just don't understand, and I think it's really interesting to think about how would that lead to the future. That how is this going to evolve with that in mind? Like how yeah, it's an interesting question, but crazy. Okay. Next question would be just kind of go back to BitCloud. Like, what are you most excited about right now? Something that might or might not be getting built. Something that you see, as you said, the next wave is developers building tools. Like, what do you see as the something that excites you?
Yeah, sure. I think what I'm hopeful that we'll see a lot more. I think we're only seeing scratching the surface on what we're seeing now. I think there's still a lot of room for imagination. But in terms of um, what's coming on the platform, I think what you can do around posts is really interesting, and what more to come on posts is coming. I think in terms of the nodes and the apps being built on top, I think BitCloud Pulse was sort of the first one. Um, I think the site launched on a Friday, and BitCloud Pulse was up on Monday, and it became this sort of core utility that everyone used. So I've been really blown away with that team and how they're thinking about sort of the apps they want to build. And I think I'll defer to them to sort of give the big reveal when they're ready. Um, but we talked about like just the back end. And what can you build on top of that? Like you can think of. It's pretty obvious to imagine a lot of CFI analogies, the Robin Hoods of the world, the Reddits of the world, the Twitter. We have the Twitter clone of the world. But on top of that, like what else could we do with these? If you think of a creator coin as like a Tamagotchi or a Pokemon, like you can have a gaming experience where you're collecting these things and they look like eggs, and then you're playing, and maybe there's a different player behavior on there. Luis in of itself can be this, should potentially be this whole. And I know Luis is thinking about building something really interesting there. So this whole like gaming node and this real world gaming concept. Um, I know, Big Cloud Signal, those folks, Jens and Eric behind that, are doing great work and just helping people understand like the value of their coins and the transfers and rug pulls and providing stats to Bits Today. I think Bits Today is underrated as well because uh, as the pace of information development is occurring so rapidly, we need some way of kind of keeping a pulse on everything.
Yeah.
And there's no why would CoinDesk or any of these other publications, sort of this if BitClout works, it will be very specific and very nuanced, and you want someone to cover sort of the intricacies of all the different businesses and sort of cater to this economy. It's almost there's another crypto project that I found really interesting that thinks about this like building an economic block. And I think if that's successful, you can have this almost be a paragovernmental economic block where where you and I right now we're sort of living on BitClout. We can communicate on BitClout. We can basically do basic economic activity. I made a bid for a painting on BitClout. That person, BitClout Museum, who put together this awesome painting, is now selling the painting. It's an auction. There's the minute this becomes real world currency, like we have commerce on here, and so it's this really rich economic block that we're a part of now, and we have yeah. So I think that's really cool, and I think the tools that are coming out, like Bits Today, media is a very powerful tool in the real world in terms of influence and advertising and reach. So I think I'm really bullish on that being like a top account in terms of reach over time.
Yeah.
In a decentralized world, there's no central moderator to tell you what to think or what the rules are. There's no rules, so the nodes will kind of operate their own, and then there was opportunity for others to sort of create rules and create norms, and I think that's kind of what Bits Today could sort of be this chain, this cultural agent of change.
Love that. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
great.
the other one would be, um, the other one would be the creator tools. I think there's a limited set of things that will be built on chain, and I think it's no surprise we all aped into a lot of these celebrities, and some of them came stuck, some of them are struggling, a lot of them came left, a lot of them haven't come on yet. So we need a lot of tools that will help ease their on ramp. I don't think some of these apps are more consumer and user facing. I think there's a whole suite of middleware of creator tools that need to be built out. So we're seeing some exciting stuff. There's a company called Moonbounce
Yep.
that's doing some really interesting stuff there. So
Yep.
how do you make use of your creator coin and help it kind of influence all the rest the of the tools you use? We talked to last thing I'll say on this topic. We talked to a pretty famous DJ last night that Douglas organized a top 10 coin holder event, and he had a couple random slots too, so it was sort of democratized access. And the artist, the DJ, was saying that when pandemic opens up, the top priority is touring. Priority number two is making music. Priority number three, family. Priority number four, maybe four, five, six down the list is crypto, and then within crypto, BitCloud is pretty far down on the list. And so, there that's going to be true of many celebrities. And so,
Yep.
how do we if you're just building BitCloud native for them, it's probably not going to get their attention. But if it stitches together BitCloud and Discord and Twitch and YouTube, then that becomes pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because I live in a creator house. So I live with a bunch of like YouTubers and Instagrammers, and now I was just saying that you see a lot of times like one of my friends, he joined the platform, but he couldn't do anything. He's like, what do I do with this? Right? He's like, I love what's going on here, but there's no like sure like you might save me 20% of the cut that I'm willing to pay Patreon, but there's no utility right now. There's no tool for me right now to make it. He saw the potential. But I feel like what you said, it's like that thing. Once there's more tools being built, like I'm just finishing up with a very very simple tool, which is basically like kind of like Moonbounce, but very simple. It's like just giving access based on how many coins you have. Like if you have X coins, give access. Like a very simple. If you have point two, like a rule based if else tool. And just to test it out, because I turned this podcast like I just as a test, as a fun experiment. I made a membership page for this podcast, and I'm like, you only get these certain clips if you own $10 of my coin, right? Right? A very simple test just to see how that performs. And I'm like, can we do something? But I don't want to go manually check does this person has $10 worth of my coin or not, right? Can I just check it automatically? Yes, $10 worth of coin, let him in, right? Very simple tool. But just to kind of test it out the waters. But kind of what you said, it's like it's unique. These creators are lingering around. They want to make money. It's just that they need those tools.
Mm. So you're in a creator house.
Yeah, I'm in a creator house. Yeah.
What's your BitCloud story? How did you find it?
So one of my friends, we were sitting outside on Saturday, just like soaking up the sun. I'm in Vancouver, and one of the YouTubers named Sam Colder made a post, and one of my friends, she's friends with him, and so she saw the post. She's like, "Oh, I saw a couple of YouTubers made this post," and I'm like, "Wow, what's BitCloud?" And I just went and I'm a YC alumni, so I've like I'm a startup founder, so it intrigues me when something new comes out. So I'm like, interesting to check it out, and then so I started reading I started reading the white paper and stuff like that, and I saw the potential because I also do Facebook advertising, so I like work with a lot of like creators like advertising their making like kind of help them make money on their products, and I understand how big of a challenge that is because they don't know the marketing or business side of things. So I see the potential there. So yeah, it's interesting. I see that whole process there, what's going on, but yeah, but how do you? But I don't understand the process of like how how blockchain works with respect to like you talked about nodes part of it and like how people are going to build on top of it. Whatever I can, at least from my perspective, whatever I can think of right now is more like that can actually be built in real world too without the help of blockchain, right? So I'm not able to understand like the big vision. That's kind of what I'm trying to understand more and learn more about it, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard to visualize a giant database and what that could be.
Yeah, yeah, but that's interesting. Andy, I'm gonna let you go. I know it's you have to go somewhere. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, Sabi, it was so fun. Thanks so much for having me.